Hello friends, welcome to Kavita's classroom. And here we go with today's chapter in hand, and that is supply. Before I move any further, I request all of you to like, share, and subscribe my channel. And here we go. In our last video, we tried talking about all the concepts, the basic concepts of supply, which talks about the supply, the definition, the difference between stock and supply, then quantity supplied and supply, and then the slope of supply curve, individual and market supply curves and schedules, and the factors affecting supply. Also the exceptions, right? Now, the topic in hand is change in quantity supplied with respect to change in supply. I just want you to be back with this equation, right? This is the supply of X is a function of price of X, price of related goods, price of factors of production, state of technology, the goals of the organization, and the government taxation and subsidies policies, right? So all these are the factors affecting supply. Okay. Do you remember I gave you this concept this way only while we were dealing with demand? So if the supply changes on account of its own price, other factors keeping the same, this is called change in quantity supplied. Or the other name is the movement along the supply curve. And the phenomenons under this would be the extension versus contraction of supply, right? And when the supply changes on account of other factors, when the price is kept constant, means there is no change in the price, but other factors are changing and hence the supply is changed. So this would be known as the second part, right? The change in supply, the shift in supply curve, and the other names to that are increase and decrease. Increase versus or decrease in the supply. Right? So with this basic understanding, let's move ahead. So first we will take up first phenomenon, that is change in quantity supplied. So here we go. Change in quantity supplied has got two aspects to talk about. One is extension, the other is contraction, right? It's a positive change. The contraction is a negative change, right? And extension is a positive change. So how and why? We know if we want to show a rise in the quantity, here the prices would be shown higher. So when the prices are high and hence the quantity is high, this phenomenon is called extension, and the reason is rise in its own price. How do we show it diagrammatically? Here the prices are shown on y-axis and quantities are shown on x-axis, and the supply curve is a positively sloping curve shown here with 2 points of reference, point A and point B, clearly showcases that yes, at point A, it means price was 1 and hence the supply was also 1. But when the price rose to 5, supply also rose, right? So from A to B, this is the extension shown. So here we do say it is upward movement on this supply curve. Right. On the contrary, if the prices were higher and now have fallen, so supply also would fall. So this process is called contraction, and the reason is the fall in its own price. And how do we showcase the same diagram, but the only change is here the arrow, instead of going up, is coming down. Here B is the first point of reference and A is the second point of reference, right? That initially it was at 5 each, but when the price slid down to 1, the quantity also fell to 1. So this is called contraction. Now, if we talk about the other phenomenon, increase and decrease in the supply, how does it go? Here, exactly the same way, but the only difference is here instead of falling curves, we have rising curves, and we have read it all in demand section, right? So increase in supply The table says whatever is the price remains the same, but here we see an increase 20 to 30. And here price line is the constant line parallel to x-axis with no change in the price of the commodity itself. The supply changes from 20 to 30. So the supply curve is now new and shifted towards right side. So this is right towards shift. Right. In our previous diagrams, we have talked about the upward or downward movement because there was one single curve. Here it is another curve created. So it is shifting altogether, change in the place, right? And on the opposite side, we talk about the decrease, and decrease happens when the prices are the same, but still there is a fall. See, the price of good is exactly 10. At this quantity also, at this quantity also. But the quantity has gone back. Why? Because of some other factors. Okay. So this phenomenon is called decrease. What else it is called? It's called shift. Shift in the supply curve. What else? Change in the supply. So there are three names. We do have one important thing of difference between the two. This does not follow the law of supply, but that contraction and extension follow the law of supply, right? So now when we talk about the movement and shift, this is the most expected section of the chapter which is asked in the papers, right? Movement along the curve and shift in the curve, it's a generalized phenomena which talks about both the effects, like contraction and extension, increase, decrease, both are taken together. So generalized expression is there, right? But when we talk about extension versus increase or contraction versus decrease, here we are talking about one-sided phenomenon. So if we talk about extension, it refers to the increase in the quantity supplied due to increase in its own price, right? So it refers to increase in the quantity supplied even when its own price is constant. Okay. Extension is studied on the assumption that other determinants are constant. Here, its own price is assumed to be constant. And extension leads to upward movement along the supply curve, but here it is rightward shift in the supply curve. Okay. On a very similar note, we have the difference given in contraction versus decrease. In rare cases, you can be given the question of difference between extension and contraction. Means the similar phenomenon but the opposite direction. So those questions can be justified using the definition, the schedule and curve, wherein you can show a rise in one and fall in other, right? And the direction of change means rightward shift versus leftward shift, or upward movement versus downward movement. So this frame gives you the most tentative question from paper's perspective, wherein extension versus increase can be asked, contraction versus decrease can be asked, or vertically also, where extension versus contraction can be asked and increase versus decrease can be asked. So best approaches, if that is there, you do give. Schedule and curve are always wonderful to fetch good marks, right? So those are recommended along with the reason and definition and the direction of change. This way you can give all the 4, 5, and which follows the law of supply. Extension and contraction follow the law of supply, but increase and decrease do not follow the law of supply, right? This is direction of change. And now, if we just move ahead, we are simply talking about how would the other factors be showcased diagrammatically. And this is how the question is asked in the papers, right? How does change in technology affect the supply of a firm? We know better technology, better supply. And deterioration in the technology means supply moves leftwards. So here we'll say before and after or impact of technology change, it gives you a rightward shift if it is a matter of improvement, right? And it gives you a leftward shift if it is a matter of deterioration, right? And then how the change in the input prices. Now think about it. Input prices means it's a matter of cost. If cost increases, supply decreases, right? There is opposite relationship. So how do this show it here diagrammatically? The supply curve shifts forward in case of decrease in the output price because here the cost of making falls. Hence the supply shifts rightwards. But here if the costs are, you know, increase in the input price will reduce the supply because here the costs are increased. So supply would be reduced. GST again is a cost for the organization, right? So before GST, it was here, but if GST is imposed, it will shift leftward because wherever you're talking about, because you can simply give the reason. Wherever it is shifting leftward, you simply say it's a pressure on the profits of the organization and hence it shifts leftwards. If the profits are expected to increase, you can show it shifting rightward. Like subsidies when are received, it's a matter of, rejoice for the supplier. So the profits are expected to be higher because costs are cut with subsidies. So hence we have supply curve after subsidy shifted to right side. Right. And then the price of related products, if you have more charm in the other things, means other things are giving you more potential, then you would switch to that. So supply of the thing in hand would be going down. So forward shift in supply curve of coffee owing to a fall in the price of tea. Though they have taken tea and coffee, but I did tell you that here it's not a matter of related goods in terms of substitute goods or complementary goods. It can be any goods which can be switched to. Means if the person is having a store, so it's his wish. He can fill his store with garments or shoe material or some other groceries or something or something. So it's a matter of profits he is looking for. Okay. So here we stop for today. And the next topic would be taken up as the price elasticity of supply. Till then, keep reading, study hard, score good marks would be a delight for me. Bye-bye. See ya.